Hello, literacy enthusiasts, and welcome to LitFilmFest Live. I'm Tim, and tonight we'll be thinking about how we explore friendship in fiction. And with me tonight, I have Tonya Ellis. Hello, Tonya. How are you?
Hi, how are you doing, Tim?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Well, very well. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you've written for us?
Okay, great. Well, I'm an author from Houston, Texas, a children's middle grade author. And the book that I wrote, or that we'll be discussing today, is book 10 in my Sophie Washington chapter book series. It's called Sophie Washington, My BFF. And this book
Great.
talks about friendships between Sophie and her BFF, Chloe, who she's known since she was in kindergarten.
What made you want to write a book about friendship, Tonya?
Okay. Well, I started my series about 3 or 4 years ago, and it started with a book about Sophie and a spelling bee. And Chloe was her friend throughout the series, and they've been close throughout the series. And I kind of wanted to explore what would happen if there was a rift in that friendship relationship, because with tweens and kids of that age group, friendships are really important. So I thought it would be fun to explore that in this episode of the series.
They're very fractious, aren't they, actually? They join and break very quickly. So it's an interesting idea to explore that within fiction. Is that something that you see as being very useful for children to understand, or like a teacher to actually explore with their children?
Yes, I think it's very useful. It helps them explore their own relationships. In my book, Sophie and Chloe's kind of catty to Sophie. She makes fun of her. There's a little bit even of cyberbullying going on. So these are issues that are important with kids of today. And reading about someone else going through these experiences may help kids reflect on things going on in their own life and encourage them to talk about it with others.
Yeah, and I think that's important, isn't it? Because you only realize that your behavior affects someone like that when you see it out of context, when you see it in someone else's life, don't you? Or on the page itself. So hopefully that would help you reflect and think, oh, maybe I shouldn't say that to my friend, or I shouldn't talk in that way or text like that online.
Exactly. And a lot of times with younger people, they may have a feeling like Chloe in the book, the BFF who's being mean to the main character, is jealous of Sophie. And so her feelings manifest in mean treatment of her best friend. And that's true. That could make a child think, hey, maybe I should talk to my friend. Maybe I shouldn't, show my emotions in this way.
Absolutely. Well, we have one copy of Sophie Washington and her BFF to give away tonight. So if you give us a big thumbs up or a retweet, or even if you comment underneath telling me who's your best school friend, your school teaching friend, and what makes them a good friend, you will be eligible to get a copy of that. So, and that'll be coming from the States, won't it? Hot on the plane.
Yes.
So yeah, we've got a lovely book. Do you have any writing tips to share? What was the writing process like for you, Tonya?
Well, I started writing my books really kind of as a bedtime story for my kids. My background was in journalism. I wrote freelance for some magazines in the Houston area. And then when I'm a mother of 3, and when they were around the ages of the characters of these books, they loved to read short chapter books similar to mine. And I noticed that none of the ones we were seeing had characters of color or much diversity. And that was my inspiration for writing these books, because Houston, the community that I live in, is one of the most diverse cities in the United States. It's the 4th biggest one. We have Asian people live here, Hispanic, Black, white, African, Muslim. It's the true melting pot. And it's a very unique and interesting place to live. So I wanted to show that in my books. But as far as getting back to writing tips, when I wrote the books, I would get up maybe 5 or 6 in the morning each day, because I was doing other work as well. My main tip would be to carve out that time and write consistently. because for students, just like in sports or any other activity, you gain your skill through repetition and consistency, in addition to training and things like that. And there, I actually read something, I'm sure you may be familiar with this, but it says that to become an expert at something, you may need 10,000 hours of practice at that thing. And so my advice for any budding young writers out there would be to write maybe in a journal on a daily basis. You could even practice blogging or something like that, but to continue writing to improve your skill. And also reading is very important. I read, I'm a voracious reader. I read at least 4 or more books a month.
I can see in the background.
Oh, on my bookshelves behind me, yes. And for my children, I love children's books. So I read a lot in that genre. And that makes me comfortable with what is popular and what people who read those type books are looking for.
Yeah, actually, books can go out of fashion, can't they, as well, which is interesting.
Yes.
You know, one thing that we're told as educators is to look for the new books that have come out, because it's often what will be applicable to, you know, enjoyable by the children. You know, things like Roald Dahl probably a bit more timeless, but you know, I grew up on Enid Blyton, these, you know, famous 5 books all about adventure stories for children, but they're a bit too slow for children now. So to be a good reader of children's books makes sure that we're serving our children better, really, doesn't it? And finding out interesting reads that applicable to them.
Right, exactly. And I want my books to be relatable to the children. And that's something I find parents will write me and say, yes, she wouldn't put the book down. She's the child who did not like to read. And now that she's found this series, she's reading, you know. So that's true. Some of the books that I read as a little girl, when I tried to give them to my children, they did not relate to them and did not want to read them at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you've already touched a little bit on this, but why do you think it's important to read about interracial friendships as well? That kind of, you've already talked about the melting pot that you live in. Why is that important to explore in books, do you think, in the class?
Just to learn about different cultures, learn about different experiences so that we can understand other people's, because we're living in a global world, a world where we're all interconnected now. And a lot of the unrest here in the United States comes about, in my opinion, because people don't understand each other. They're not familiar with differences, and so there's distrust and things like that. But if we learn about each other, learn about people's backgrounds and experiences, you may have more understanding when there are conflicts or disagreements about things. And I think that's important. And really, our world is small now. Now, of course, we can't travel now, but you know, we travel more than I ever imagined when I was growing up. Everyone is interconnected. That's really why the pandemic spread the way it did, because you know, years past, people weren't traveling and mingling the way that we do. So we need to work together and understand each other. So books need to be diverse, and it's just necessary in our age that we understand each other.
We'll read a bit in your extract that you're going to read for us in a minute, chapter 1. But Sophie, she feels a little bit conscious. I got the feeling of having a photo taken next to someone else of a different race, and it's not a huge thing, but I think she like twiddles with a braid. She's quite conscious that she has, you know, that she has braids, that she is different, and for me that jumps out, that is inside that child's, you know, mind, that they are feeling conscious in that way. And really, I would never understand that personally, because I'm not a 7-year-old black girl with braids. I'm not sure if you know, Chris. But to see that in fiction at that time, I am in that character's head. You know, I do feel for her, and I do understand how she's feeling. So, you know, fiction for me, particularly, you know, what you've written is great at, you know, explaining those principles of how someone else feels, and that is, you know, in someone else's skin.
And that's interesting you bring that up, because when I wrote that, I wasn't even really thinking that way. But also Chloe is considered the prettiest quote in the group. So Sophie's conscious of her appearance around her as well. So
interesting.
Yeah, but that's true.
What impact do you hope to see on the reader from your writing? I mean, either about friendship or race, actually.
Well, with friendship, I hope that they see in this book, Sophie gets into trouble because she is not true to herself, trying to fit in with the other children and keep that friendship. She does things she shouldn't do. And I want them to be encouraged to be true to themselves and to know that people need to like you for yourself and who you are and accept you as you are, as long as you're behaving properly and morally. But with the racial issue, this book doesn't really specifically deal with race. But as I mentioned, all the books have characters from multicultural backgrounds. So they teach tolerance and acceptance of differences in others. So I want them to take that away when they read books. And to know that there's different ways of doing things. One character is Hispanic. Her parents are immigrants and they eat churros. And so it introduces different types of food to the children. One is an Indian character who does Bollywood dancing. She's not in this book. She's in another book in the series. But I want them just to be exposed to that and introduced to other cultures. That was an aim of mine when writing these books. And
that makes the writing a bit more varied as well. I imagine you can be quite creative when you're mixing cultures, can't you? Really, there's been whole books that have been based on the mix of cultures. We were just talking about the book No Ballet in Syria as well, weren't we, Tonya? And how that's a book about refugees coming over to England and how those two cultures mix and how that makes for, adds tension to a story, but also interest, doesn't it? Yeah, I want to get that book once we get off. That sounds really interesting. It's something I would like. So I'm looking forward to reading that. And another thing that I want my books to do is just to make something that's relatable and that will keep them reading, because with all the distractions kids have today, it's harder than ever for parents to get kids reading. And so I want something that they can relate to, that they feel like helps them with their problems and also entertains them and is fun and will keep them turning those pages. Absolutely. Nothing better than a good book. Definitely. Yes. And to get that reading habit, because here, a lot of the books that feature African-American characters, and there are not many, as I mentioned to you before we started the interview, I believe 12% of books published in the USA featured African-American protagonists last year. But I want them to have something where they can see themselves and other kids can have, they say there's a psychologist named Rudine Sims Bishop who says books should be mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. So I want them to be mirrors where kids can see themselves, windows where others from different groups can learn about other children, other places, and sliding glass doors where they can feel like they're entering and experiencing different cultures and lives. That's a fantastic quote, isn't it? Really interesting. Yeah, that really speaks to me because, and I feel like even for myself, I grew up in Kentucky, in Louisville, Kentucky, where Breonna Taylor was murdered, the woman you hear about in the news. And so books really opened up the world to me because it made me want to travel and, go to different places, because I was in a small community here in the United States. So, and I want my books to be that window and that place of comfort for children. And get them reading and loving books like I do. We had a really interesting book released last year called "Why I'm No Longer Talking to White Folk About Black Problems." I think it was that. That's a slight misspeak, but it was brought out last year and it sold fairly well. And then, lo and behold, BLM happened. Really took off, and it became a bestseller. Because suddenly, the world was open to like the Black community and the issues that were raised, and it was interesting, really, that book, "Why I'm No Longer Talking to White Folk," that came out last year. People weren't buying it, and but then they were very receptive. It was a good, like you said, like a good window into into like how we're trying to listen now to each other, and how your books are a symbol of people coming together and being friends and going through problems as well, which is an important thing for any friendship to do, let alone any friendships from different backgrounds. But that should be a good window of what we should be trying to go through and achieve.
Yeah, I think so. And I see that here in my community. It's no utopia by any means, but my children attended schools similar to the one I depict in my books. And the kids really got along in harmony, different races. My kids had friends of all races. And, so I feel like if people understand one another and interact, it can be that way. I think a lot of times it's just people don't understand or know and have fear of something they don't understand.
Absolutely. Right, Tonya, we're going to now go to our quick fire fiction section. So it's going to be a resource that all teachers can use in the classroom. Tomorrow, we'll be also editing this section up and putting it on the website. We're going to get you to do a reading in a second, and then we will pull it apart and ask you some meaty questions about your writing to dig deep into it. Are you ready?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to get going. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Okay, Tonya, can you read your extract for us? And then we are going to pull it apart, get into a really comprehension task that everyone can use in the classroom tomorrow.
Okay, so I read my extract now. Okay, great. I'll read chapter 1 in Sophie Washington, my BFF. Pleasure Pier. My mom says a good way to finish something I hate doing, like eating Brussels sprouts, is to get on with it and count backward from 10 until I'm done. I tried it last week after she made me apologize for calling my brother Nuggethead. It was a teensy bit easier. But what's happening right now is so terrible that I silently count down all the way from 100 and squeeze my eyes shut. 99, 98, 97, 96. Isn't this great, Sophie? Chloe interrupts my thoughts and grabs my hand as the attendant snaps us in our seats. It's so pretty up here. Look down. I peek one eye open and spy huge waves splashing under us as our cart creaks up the track. Brightly colored umbrellas dot the sand below like Skittles, and I suck in the warm sea breeze to calm myself. I can't believe I let my best friend convince me to get on the killer whale, the biggest roller coaster at Pleasure Pier. Our science class is on a day trip to Galveston Bay, about an hour from Houston, where we live. We spent the morning looking at turtles, shells, and crabs on the beach. Our visit to the amusement park is an extra treat. This is going to be epic, shouts Chloe as we inch higher up the hill. She raises both arms in the air. I grip the handle on the roller coaster seat so tightly my knuckles are sore. Seagulls fly above us through cottony clouds without a care in the world. If only I could be so calm. I'm wet your pants scared right now. Have the time of your life, says a sign outside the entrance with palm trees on either side. Yeah, right. The only reason I'm not at the carnival games is because I want to spend time with my BFF Chloe. We've been friends since we shared a swing in kindergarten, and we do everything together, like cheer for our school and play on the tennis team. She's taller and noisier than I am, but somehow we belong together, like chips and salsa. Chloe isn't in any of my classes this year. During free period, she gets special tutoring for her dyslexia. Don't ask me what dyslexia means exactly, but she's not so great at spelling and takes twice as long as the rest of us to do her schoolwork. Chloe's been talking about riding the killer whale since we were too short to be allowed on roller coasters. I'd do anything for my best friend, and I didn't want to look like a chicken, so I faced my fear. Looking back, I still can't believe I got in line when Chloe begged. The killer whale is the perfect name for that ride. Carts race up and down the grayish-blue rails like they're on a speed track, and then drop down huge hills. That's what I'm talking about. Toby, the cutest boy in the 6th grade, stood in front of us in line with his mouth open. Forget about the baby rides. I want to ride this one the whole time we're here. This is so cool. Nathan, Toby's buddy for the field trip, gave him a high five. And since there are 2 tracks, we shouldn't have to wait long to get on. The crowded line came to a standstill, and we continued to talk. Hey, Sophie, did you start that poetry assignment for English class? Toby edged around Chloe. Can you help me with it at school tomorrow? I need to get an A or B to raise my grade. You read the poem yet? Said Nathan, pausing the video game he was playing on his phone and also looking my way. I can't figure it out. Why didn't you ask me what I think about the poem? Asked Chloe with a frown. Well, I didn't think you were doing the same work, said Toby. Her lips curled, and I braced myself. Chloe is super sweet most of the time, but act like she's not as smart as someone else, and she changes from cuddly kitten to ferocious tiger. As a matter of fact, I am doing the same work, she said, wrapping her arms around her chest. Just because I go to a tutor sometimes doesn't mean I don't know what's going on. I still have the same English assignments as you guys. I don't think he meant that, Chloe, I said. Yeah, everybody knows you're the spelling champion, while I'm the 6th grade dummy, said Chloe. Now, wait a minute, I said. My braids were blown back by the air from a roller coaster cart. The line started to move again, and Valentina, another of our good friends, pulled out her cell phone. Get closer, guys. I want to get a picture of us in front of the killer whale. We all leaned in. Chloe, who looks like a tween model, shook her shiny black curls and flashed a bright smile for the camera. I hoped my 2 braids weren't sticking up. Let me see. Valentina's field trip partner, Mariama, peered down at the picture and giggled. Your eyes are all bugged out, Sophie. OMG. Chloe put her hand over her mouth to hold in her laugh. I grabbed for the phone. Delete that, Valentina. No problemo. I'll take another one, she said. The people in back pushed us, so we had to go forward. Come on, y'all, the line's moving. Chloe eased us closer to the killer whale, and I forgot about the embarrassing picture. I wanted to ride the killer whale as much as a fish wants to be hooked on a line. A couple of months ago, I threw up at the top of a giant slide at a school festival, but I didn't want to look like a scaredy cat in front of Chloe and my other friends. Now I'm strapped into this lunchbox on wheels with no way out. We move faster, and I begin to count again. 95, 94, 93, 92. Here we go.
Brilliant. Fantastic.
Thank you.
We've just had a comment from Laura. Thanks, Laura. Finding a book with a range of characters from different races where race isn't the central topic is tricky. These sound absolutely fab. Thank you, Laura, for sending that in. I think that's a good summary, really, isn't it, of what you're aiming to do in your books.
Right. They don't talk exactly about race all the time.
Yeah. It's not always the topic, is it? Kids are kids, aren't they? They just want to get on and do things like go on scary rides or not, as Sophie found out.
Right. And that's something else that was an aim of mine when I wrote my books, because a lot of the books that deal with African-American issues or feature African-American characters in this age range are kind of heavy topics, social issues, which are very important, or they're historical, talking about slavery and things. And then it makes it where the kids it's not something just fun to read, and those are wonderful, meaty books that are very good. Many of them I treasure, but I wanted something that was just fun that they could enjoy and read.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kids are kids. They just want to run around, don't they? And be silly and roll in the mud.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Tonya, are you ready for your quick fire fiction questions?
Oh, yes, I'm ready.
Come on. Bring it on. Bring it on.
Bring it on.
See how well you know your own book. Was there anything your parent or guardian told you that you should get used to doing?
Really working hard, because in life, nothing comes without a lot of hard work and putting in that work and time. So that's something my parent told me.
Fantastic. Good answer. Mine probably was the Brussels sprout one, actually. I have to get used
to,
which is hard work, isn't it? Eating Brussels sprouts is hard work. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Have you ever been peer pressured into doing something that you didn't want to by your friends?
That's a good question. Actually, I remember when I was around Sophie's age, I always was a pretty nerdy kid and little Miss Straight A at school, just like Sophie. And I remember letting someone copy answers in about 6th or 7th grade, and I got a 0. So I learned my lesson, never do that again. And that was something I was pressured. I felt like trying to be somebody's friend that I should not have done.
I had exactly the same story, except I gave my friends the wrong answers on purpose.
Good idea.
And they learned not to copy from me. So.
That was smart. Yeah.
What do you hope children will think that this book is about before they read it, say from the front cover?
I hope they'll think it's about having fun with friends and getting along with friends.
Yeah, good. Why do you use italics for the word teensy in the opening paragraph?
Just to stress that it's a teensy bit easier, or I can't remember that exact line, but it's saying it's a teensy bit easier. So it was just a little easier for her. So when you use those italics, you're stressing that word.
And I could hear that when you read it as well. You actually go teens, and you actually want to do that with your hands. If you were to act it out, you would go teensy, wouldn't you? So it's funny that just putting words on a slant like that makes you actually act it out and change your voice. But yeah, absolutely stresses it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What perspective are you writing in, and why did you make that choice? So first or third person?
I'm writing in first person, and I made that choice so you're right in Sophie's head. You're seeing the world through her eyes. So when you write in third person, it's like a narrator is there telling you what's happening. But first person means you're speaking through that character's voice directly.
You can hear a lot of her thoughts. She's got quite a bit of sass, hasn't she, Sophie? And it's nice to hear that in first person, I think. Otherwise, she'd have to be speaking it if it was third person.
Or there would be a narrator saying, Sophie walked to the roller coaster. She felt this way. But you wouldn't know her exact thoughts. The narrator would be telling you what she's doing and describing what was happening.
And that was important for you to have that in first person, then, was it? Right.
Or third person. Third person would be the narrator.
Yeah, and it feels like I get to know Sophie better because it's her thoughts rather than the narrator describing our thoughts, I guess.
Right, it's a little more intimate because you're in her head, so you're hearing her thoughts on any situation.
Great. Why does Sophie think the killer whale is a perfect name for the ride?
Well, she's not sure if she'll survive the ride, so that's why she thinks it's a perfect name. She's scared to death.
Is there a metaphor that describes how Chloe acts when someone is smarter than herself?
So in the book, I said that she changes from cuddly kitten to ferocious tiger. So she's normally seems really nice, and her character throughout the series, when anyone talks about her dyslexia, she becomes very angry. She's like, if you know the Incredible Hulk, she goes from Bill Bixby to the Incredible Hulk. I wanted to put that in there, but I didn't know if kids would know what that was. So
oh, definitely. I think they definitely would. Where is the simile in this extract? I'm just going to read that out for you.
It was in the end. I remember you told me. I've seen that.
Do you want to read that out?
I wanted to be put on a line, like a fish on a line or something.
Yeah, that's it.
I wanted to ride the killer whale as much as a fish wants to be hooked on a line. Well,
so so why did you choose to write that simile in there?
Well, they were they were in Galveston Bay, so they were in a beach area. So I was trying to use descriptions that kind of brought to mind where they were, which was it's actually about 40 minutes to an hour from my home. I love living near there, especially in these times, because I go there on the weekends and hang out on the beach, and it's not really crowded. And here in Houston, the temperature, I don't know it in Celsius or whatever your degrees are there, but it's like 70 and 80 degrees. So wow. I've been going there every weekend. Yeah. So it's really nice. But I wanted to bring to mind that seaside atmosphere.
Lovely. And thank you, Tonya. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. You do have a new book out soon. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that before you go?
Thank you for having me. Thanks so much. I've enjoyed my time here with you, Tim. And my newest book is Sophie Washington Class Retreat. I don't have the copies. I've printed out. It's coming out next week. I don't have the physical copy here. But in this one, Sophie and her friends take a camping trip. And her brother talks about Bigfoot that they see on a show. And so they're afraid that they're going to see Bigfoot. So it's coming out kind of near Halloween time. And It's talking about their fears of this imaginary Bigfoot. And it also does explore race in more detail in this book than in the other ones.
Fabulous. Well, Tonya Ellis, thank you so much for joining us. We really enjoyed having you on. You'd be very much welcome back anytime you'd like to. And we do have a giveaway, so we are giving away one of the Sophie Washington series books that Tonya will be sending out. Please just like, retweet, or comment below, and you stand a chance of gaining one of those books. Don't forget to check out all of our resources online too at litfilmfest.com. We have lots on friendships and race actually as well. The quickfire write series is great. There's loads of free projects on there that you could just teach tomorrow, play the video, ask the questions, get them to write a really meaty information piece all about these topics. So thank you, Tonya, for staying with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. It's funny, it's night where you are, it's day where I am. So
Ooh. You should write one about that. Ooh, spooky. Take care.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.